And the economic output of Scotland fell in the last 3 months of 2016 by 0.2%. It means the economy didn't grow at all last year. That contrasts with growth picking up across the UK as a whole. Over the past year, Scottish growth amounted to only 0.4%, while UK output grew 4 times as fast. Stuart McIntyre from the Fraser of Allender Institute told us the figures were part of a long-term trend.
I would caution against people clinging on to appealing narratives which are nevertheless explaining something which is part of a much longer term trend rather than something which is the last 3 months, the last 6 months. This has been a decline since 2015. Of course,
for 2 years now, essentially.
Yeah. If you look at the employment numbers, for instance, some of the longer term trends around inactivity. If you look at the most recent data on this, inactivity in Scotland is up. Yes, unemployment is down, but that's because people are leaving the labour market to become inactive. If you look at the UK as a whole, unemployment is down, but equally inactivity is down. So you're getting these differences in the labour market as well as in an overall GDP.
Well, we're joined now by the Finance Secretary, Derek McKay. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You must be disappointed by this general slowdown in Scotland's economy.
No, of course that's fair to say. We want to see sustained economic growth in Scotland, and that's why I've got a range of actions to support that. And we'll continue to monitor this whilst taking the necessary action. What do you put it down to? I think there's a number of complex issues here. I think there's a reaction to the Brexit vote, certainly over the short term since the vote last June.
But why are we not seeing the same reaction across the UK as a whole? We're all leaving the EU.
There does seem to be a difference looking at the polling and analysis on consumer confidence and sentiment between Scotland and the rest of the UK since the Brexit vote.
No, in fact, it's been the case since a year before.
Sharply.
If you look at consumer confidence in Scotland and the UK, there's been a sharp contrast with consumer confidence here much lower for a year before the Brexit vote.
It fell more sharply since the Brexit vote, though. What I was also going to go on and say, there was an impact.
The same as the UK, though, there was a sharp fall for both measures.
What I'm describing, though, is the fall in consumer confidence since the Brexit vote. But there are a number of other issues as well, such as the impact on the economy and the downturn in oil and gas, which has clearly affected Scotland on the wider economy. There's also issues around construction as well. There was quite high levels of growth in 2014 and 2015, not sustained in 2016. So I think these are some of the interactions in the economy, and clearly we want to focus our efforts in growing our economy, and that's why there's a range of government actions to support construction and other sectors, not least oil and gas, where the Chancellor failed to act in his most recent budget. So examples of what the Scottish Government's doing.
Do you accept that alone is not enough to pull the industry out of the slump that we have seen, though?
Sure, I think I'm recognising that there are a range of factors that play here in the Scottish economy, but I tell you what won't help the Scotland economy, and that's if we leave the single market, because we know it'll be very damaging to Scotland's economy, and that's why we need to try and sustain our place
because of
exports. Exports, yes, but there are factors as well, such as migration. Sustaining our working population is really important to Scotland, and therefore that's also a substantial issue where we don't hold the control, but the UK government does.
Why do you think that Scotland's export market, it hasn't been performing very well of late, though?
Well, it's substantially increased over the last number of years, and we want to do more. I mean, the First Minister's obviously trying to secure further support and contracts and investments in Scotland as we speak. But we have been supporting internationalisation of Scottish business through government agencies and providing direct support. But we know that a number of domestic companies could do more to export, and those export markets are at threat if we leave the single market. We know the impact that will have. I mean, I should say, I recognise that these figures are disappointing.
But surely if Scotland were to be separate from the UK, doesn't that create just as significant a barrier for trade in Scotland, with the UK being the most significant market? Not
at all. It's not either or. I mean, we can have both. I mean, no one's really arguing that there should be trade barriers between Scotland.
So you're not worried about being separate from the UK as a major market, but you are worried about being separate from the rest of Europe?
But why would the Prime Minister and the UK want to trade with the rest of the world on free trade but not Scotland if we happen to be independent. What we're trying to do is to secure a place in the single market, so we've got access to that substantial, much larger market, as well as sustain our relationship with the rest of the UK. That can be achieved. What we're trying to do is get the best possible outcome for Scotland, but clearly just resting on the UK's position and walking out of the single market would be damaging to Scotland. But I have to say there's a range of other actions that are important to stimulate our economy as well, including the £6 billion infrastructure programme, lowering business rates, supporting small businesses, and we've lifted 100,000 businesses out of business rates altogether, and I'm taking forward the Scottish Growth Scheme as well.
Many others have seen an increase, though, in their business rates.
Well, the net average bill for business rates will actually go down, and more than half of businesses will pay no rates at all, and 70% of businesses will pay the same rates or less. But yes, some have faced increases as a consequence of the independent revaluation, but the decisions that I've been able to take in lowering the poundage, that's the business rates for all businesses who pay non-domestic rates, it has actually gone down. I reduced that, as well as raising the thresholds for small business bonus and the large business supplement as well.
But there must be an underlying inertia in the Scottish economy now. Looking at the figures for the last couple of years, on whatever sort of measure you look at, I mean, Scotland's economy is growing at about a quarter of the rate of the whole of the UK. What do you think is causing that? Why are businesses here apparently less confident, not investing as much? Why is that? Why are consumers less confident in Scotland?
Well, I want clearly confidence to be improved, and that's why we're investing more, and that's why we're taking
actions. Why do you think it's happening? If you don't know what the problem is, how do you solve it?
I think it's a range of issues, not helped by Brexit, of course, but even before that, as you say, there's divergence from 2015, and I think it's in part down to the downturn in oil and gas, which has impacted in other sectors as well. But there is growth in positive areas, in areas like energy, life sciences, and new forms of technology as well. And there's a number of recent announcements that will be very welcome in Scotland about jobs locating here, and we want to try and stimulate that. And I could give a number of examples of companies who have said that they'll either locate here or will grow their business here, and that's good for employment. But as I say, there's more also that the UK government do to support oil and gas, because that's certainly part of the issue here.
But even for the sectors out with the oil and gas industry, where manufacturing, where we're seeing a very sluggish results there. More generally, are you confident you are doing enough to support the Scottish economy to try to stimulate growth? And if that's the case, when do you expect to see the impact of that in the GDP figures?
As I say, there have been a number of recent announcements around job growth, around innovation, energy development as well. In investing in infrastructure, whether that's roads or housing or digital, all of that will support business growth also. And a specific
when will you see an impact, do you think? When would you hope, when will the government hope to see an impact of that spending?
Well, clearly the sooner the better. And some of the specific interventions that we make through our industrial strategy or internationalisation or the innovation hubs that we're investing in, all of that can lead to new investment and further foreign direct investment now, as well as, I say, the infrastructure programme that's building up the infrastructure of our country. And we're also working in partnership with the higher education sector, making connections with the business community also. And the decisions that I took in the budget about further investment and about lowering a business tax through non-domestic rates, as I say, I reduced the poundage, I've lifted 100,000 businesses out of business rates altogether. These kind of actions will impact from the start of the financial year.
What about your new income tax powers, of course, which have come into effect now? The fact that people on the higher rate of income tax will be paying about around £400 more a year than their counterparts on a similar rate in England and Wales. What do you think that will do to consumer confidence and to people's willingness to spend?
Well, I mean, Scotland has these powers to use around income tax. I think that we should use them also to build a wealthier country, certainly, but also a fairer country. And what I didn't do was pass on the Tory tax cut for the top 10% of income earners. Now, that difference has been described
Will
by
this
others
help
as
to
not...
stimulate consumer spending and therefore the economy?
Well, it helps contribute to our public services, which is what I've just mentioned around, for example, infrastructure expenditure, whether it's housing or transportation, connectivity, digital connectivity as well. So we are raising revenue to be able to invest in our country. And it's about fairness as well, making sure that there's a fairness in our tax system. But as you've heard others describe, the divergence this year was really between the higher rate
threshold. Well, over the last couple of years.
Well, we've only had income tax, so I'm speaking specifically about income tax,
okay,
which you referred to, and the change this year, in this financial year, was between the higher rate threshold itself. We didn't propose to put up tax rates, we haven't put up tax rates, but there has been some divergence in the threshold for higher rate, and that's the top 10%
that's what I
of
was
income
explaining.
earners. Certainly, yeah, absolutely. But that's, as I say, not a substantial divergence, and I would argue it's part of the fairer country and society that we want to build. We're investing in our public services and investing in social contract. Well, that means free education, no prescription charges, so on and so forth. So that feels like the right balance, but of course I'll engage to make sure that we get the tax regime right for individuals, communities and business.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. It's the Finance Secretary, Derek McKay, 21 minutes past 8.